Jonathan Harker's journal. Continue. I woke in my own bed, if that be that I had not dreamt the Count must have carried me here. I tried to satisfy myself on the subject, but could not arrive at any unquestionable result. To be sure, there were certain small evidences, such as that my clothes were folded and laid in a manner which was not my habit. My watch was still unwound, and I am rigorously accustomed to wind it the last thing before going to bed, and many such details. But these things are no proof, for they may have been evidences that my mind was not as usual, and from some cause or other I had certainly been much upset. I must watch for proof. One thing I am glad. If it was that the Count carried me here and undressed me, he must have been hurried in his tasks. For my pockets are intact. I am sure this diary would have been a mystery to him, which he would not have brooked. He would have taken it or destroyed it. As I looked round this room, although it has been to me so full of fear, it is now a sort of sanctuary, for nothing can be more dreadful than those awful women who are waiting to suck my blood. 18th May. I bent down to look at that room again in daylight, for I must know the truth. When I got to the doorway in the top of the stairs, I found it closed. It had been so forcibly driven against the jamb that part of the woodwork was splintered. I could see that the bolt of the lock had not been shot, but the door was fastened from the inside. I fear it was no dream, and I must act on this surmise. 19th May. I am surely in the toils. Last night the Count asked me in the suavest tones to write 3 letters, one saying that my work here was nearly done, and that I should start for home within a few days, another that I was starting on the next morning from the time of the letter, and the third that I had left the castle and arrived at Bistritz. I would fain to have rebelled, but felt that in the present state of things it would have been madness to quarrel openly with the Count whilst I am so absolutely in his power, and to refuse would be to excite his suspicion and to arouse his anger. He knows that I know too much, and that I must not live, lest I be dangerous to him. My only chance is to prolong my opportunities. Something may occur which will give me a chance to escape. I saw in his eyes something of that gathering wrath which was manifest when he hurled the fair woman from him. He explained to me that posts were few and uncertain, and that my writing now would ensure ease of mind to my friends. And he assured me with much impressiveness that he would countermand the later letters, which would be held over at Bistritz until due time in case chance would admit of my prolonging my stay. That to oppose him would have been to create new suspicion. I therefore pretended to fall into his views, and asked him what dates I should put on the letters. He calculated a minute, and then said, "The first should be June 12th, the second June 19th, and the third June 29th. I know now the span of my life. God help me. 28th May. There is a chance of escape, or, at any rate, of being able to send word home. A band of Sanjanis have come to the castle, and are encamped in the courtyard. These Zanjanis are gypsies. I have notes of them in my book. They are peculiar. They are peculiar to this part of the world, though allied to the ordinary gypsies of all the world over. There are thousands of them in Hungary and Transylvania, who are almost outside all law. They attach themselves, as a rule, to some great noble or boyar, and call themselves by his name. They are fearless and without religion, save superstition, and they talk only their own varieties of the Romanian tongue. I shall write some letters home, and shall try to get them to have them posted. I have already spoken to them through my window to begin an acquaintanceship. They took their hats off and made obeisance and made signs, which, however, I could not understand any more than I could their spoken language. I have written the letters. Mina's in shorthand, and I simply asked Mr. Hawkins to communicate with her. To her I have explained my situation, but without the horrors which I may only surmise. It would shock and frighten her to death were I to expose my heart to her. Should the letters not carry, then the Count shall not yet know my secret or the extent of my knowledge. I have given the letters. I threw them through the bars of my window with the gold piece, and made what signs I could to have them posted. The man who took them pressed them to his heart and bowed, and then put them in his cap. I could do no more. I stole back to the study and began to read. As the Count did not come in, I have written here. The Count has come in. He sat down beside me and said in his smoothest voice as he opened two letters, The Sanjani has given me these, of which, though I know not whence they come, I shall of course take care. See, he must have looked at it. One is from you, and to my friend Peter Hawkins. The other... Here he caught sight of the strange symbols as he opened the envelope, and the dark look came into his face, and his eyes blazed wickedly. The other is a vile thing, an outrage upon friendship and hospitality. It is not signed, well, so it cannot matter to us. He calmly held the letter in an envelope in the flame of the lamp till they were consumed. Then he went on. The letter to Hawkins, that I shall, of course, send on, since it is yours. Your letters are scarce to me. You pardon, my friend, that unknowingly I did break the seal. Will you not cover it again? He held out the letter to me, and with a courteous bow handed me a clean envelope. I could only redirect it and hand it to him in silence. When he went out of the room, I could hear the key turn softly. A minute later, I went over and tried it, and the door was locked. When an hour or two after the Count came quietly into the room, his coming awakened me, for I had gone to sleep on the sofa. He was very courteous and very cheery in his manner, and seeing that I had been sleeping, he said, So, my friend, you are tired. Get to bed. There is the surest rest. I may not have the pleasure to talk tonight, since there are many labors to me. But you will sleep, I pray. I passed to my room and went to bed, and, strange to say, slept without dreaming. Despair has its own calms. 31st May. This morning when I woke, I thought I would provide myself with some paper and envelopes from my bag and keep them in my pocket, so that I might write in case I should get an opportunity, but again a surprise, again a shock. Every scrap of paper was gone, and with it all my notes and my memorandum relating to the railways and travel, my letter of credit, in fact, all that might be useful to me. Were I once outside the castle, I sat and pondered a while, and then some thought occurred to me, and I made a search of my portmanteau and in my wardrobe where I had placed my clothes. The suit in which I had travelled was gone, and also my overcoat was a rug. I could find no trace of them anywhere. This looked like some new scheme of villainy. 17th June. This morning, as I was sitting on the edge of my bed, cuddling my brains, I could hear without a cracking of whips or pounding of scraping of horses' feet up the rocky path beyond the courtyard. With joy, I hurried to the window and saw drive into the yard two great leiter wagons, each drawn by 8 sturdy horses, at the head of each a pair of Slovak, with his wide hat, great nail-studded belt, dirty sheepskin, and high boots. They had also their long staves in hand. I ran to the door, intending to descend to try joining them through the main hall, as I thought that way might be opened for them. Again, a shock. My door was fastened on the outside. Then I ran to the window and cried to them. They looked up at me stupidly and pointed, but just then the hetman of the Zhani came out, and seeing them point to my window, said something, at which they laughed. Henceforth, no effort of mine, no piteous cry or agonized entreaty would make them even look at me. They resolutely turned away. The later wagons contained great square boxes with handles of thick ropes. These were evidently empty by the ease which the Slovaks handled them, and by their resonance as they were roughly moved. When they were all unloaded and packed into a great heap in one corner of the yard, the Slovaks were given some money by the Sanjani by spitting on it for luck, lazily, winning each to his horse's head. Shortly afterwards, I heard the cracking of the whips die away in the distance. 24th June, before morning. Last night the Count left me early and locked himself in his own room. As soon as I dared to, I ran up the winding stair and looked out the window which opened south. I thought I would watch for the Count, for there's something going on. The Sanjani are quartered somewhere in the castle, and they're doing work of some kind. I know it, for now and then I hear a far-away muffled sound as of a mutton-tuck and spade, and whatever it is, it must be the end of some ruthless villainy. I had been at the window somewhat less than half an hour, when I saw something come out of the Count's window. I drew back and watched carefully, and saw the whole man emerge. It was a new shock to me to find that he had on the suit of clothes which I had worn whilst travelling here, and slung over his shoulder the terrible bag which I had seen the women take away. There could be no doubt to his quest, and in my garb too. This, then, is his new scheme of villainy, of evil, that he will allow others to see me as they think, so that he may both leave evidence that I have been seen in towns or villages posting my own letters, and that any wickedness which he may do shall by the local police be attributed to me. It makes me rage to think that this can go on, and whilst I'm shut up here, a veritable prisoner, but without that protection of the law which is even a criminal's right and consolation. I thought I would watch for the Count's return, and for a long time sat doggedly at the window. Then began to notice that there were some quaint little specks floating in the rays of the moonlight. They were like the teeniest grains of dust, and they whirled round and gathered in clusters in a nebulous sort of way. I watched them with a sense of soothing, and the sort of calm stole over me. I leaned back to the embrasure in a more comfortable position, so I could enjoy more fully the aerial gambolling. Something made me start up, a low, piteous howling of dogs somewhere far below the valley, which was hidden from my sight. Louder it seemed to ring in my ears, and the floating motes of dust to take new shapes to the sound as they danced in the moonlight. I felt myself struggling to awaken to some call of my instincts. Nay, my very soul was struggling, and my half-remembered sensibilities were striving to answer the call. I was becoming hypnotized. Quicker and quicker danced the dust and moonbeams, seemed to quiver as they went by me and the mass of gloom beyond. More and more they gathered till they seemed to take dim phantom shapes. And then I started, broad, awake in full possession of my senses, and ran screaming from the place. The phantom shapes, which were becoming gradually materialized from the moonbeams, were those of the three ghostly women who I was doomed. I fled. I felt somewhat safer in my own room, where there was no moonlight and where the lamp was burning brightly. When a couple of hours had passed, I heard something stirring in the count's room, something like a sharp wail, quicker suppressed, and then there was silence, deep, awful silence, which chilled me. With a beating heart, I tried the door, but I was locked in my prison. I could do nothing. I sat down and simply cried. As I sat, I heard a sound in the courtyard without the agonized cry of a woman. I rushed to the window and, throwing it up, peered out between the bars. There indeed was a woman, with dishevelled hair, holding her hands over her heart as one distressed with running. She was leaning against the corner of the gateway. When she saw my face at the window, she threw herself forward and shouted in a violent voice laden with menace, "Monster, give me my child!" She threw herself on her knees and, raising her hands, cried the same words and tones which wrung my heart. Then she tore her hair and beat her breasts and abandoned herself to all violences of extravagant emotion. Finally, she threw herself forward, and though I could not see her, I could hear the beating of her naked hands against the door. Somewhere high overhead, probably on the tower, I heard the voice of Kent calling in a harsh, metallic whisper. His call seemed to be answered from far and wide by the howling of wolves. Before many minutes had passed, a pack of them poured, like a pent-up dam when liberated through the wide entrance into the courtyard. There was no cry from the woman, and the howling of the wolves was but short. Before long they streamed away singingly, licking their lips. I could not pity her, for I knew now what had become of her child. She was better dead. What shall I do? What can I do? How can I escape from this dreadful thrall of night and gloom and fear? 25th June, morning. No man knows till he has suffered from the night how sweet and how dear to his heart and eye the morning can be. When the sun grew so high this morning that it struck the top of the great gateway opposite my window, the high spot which it touched seemed to me as if the dove from the ark had lighted there. My fear fell from me as if it had been a vaporous garment. Some sort of whilst the courage of the day is upon me. Last night my post-dated letters went to post. The first of the fatal series, which is to blot out the very traces of my existence from the earth. Let me think of it. Action. It was always been at night time that I had been molested or threatened, or in some way in danger or in fear. I have not yet seen the Count in the daylight. Can it be that he sleeps when others wake, and that he may be awake whilst they sleep? If I could only get into his room. There is no possible way. The door is always locked. No way for me. Yes, there is a way, if one dares to take it. Where his body has gone, why not another body go? I have seen him myself crawl from his window. Why should not I imitate him and go in by his window? The chances are desperate, but I need more. But my need is more desperate still. I shall risk it. At the worst, it can only be death, and a man's death is not a calf's, and the dread hereafter may still be open to me. God help me in my task. Goodbye, Mina. If I fail, goodbye, my faithful friend and second father. Goodbye, all, and last of all, Mina. Same day, later. I made the effort, and God helping me, I have come safely back to this room. I must put down every detail in order. I went whilst my courage was fresh straight to the window on the south side, and at once got outside on the narrow ledge of stone which runs around the building on this side. The stones were big and roughly cut, and the mortar had by process of time been washed away between them. I took off my boots and ventured out on the desperate way, and looked down once so as to make sure that a sudden glimpse of the awful depth would not overcome me. But after that kept my eyes away from it, I knew pretty well the direction and the distance from the Count's window, and made for it as well as I could, having regarded to the opportunities available. I did not feel dizzy. Suppose I was too excited, and at the same time seemed ridiculously short, till I found myself standing on the window sill and tried to raise up the sash. I was filled with agitation, however, when I bent down and slid feet foremost in through the window. Then I looked around for the Count, but with surprise and gladness made a discovery. The room was empty. It was barely furnished, and with odd things which seemed to have never been used. And furniture was something the same style as that in the south rooms, and was covered with dust. I looked for the key, but it was not in the lock, and I could not find it anywhere. The only thing I found was a great heap of gold in one corner. Gold of all kinds: Roman, British, Austrian, Hungarian, Greek, and Turkish money, covered with a film of dust, as though it had lain long in the ground. None of it that I noticed was less than 300 years old. There were also chains and ornaments, some jeweled, but all of them old and stained. At one corner of the room was a heavy door. I tried it, for since I could not find the key to the room or the key of the outer door, which was the main object of my search, I must make further examination, or all my efforts would be in vain. It was open, and led through a stone passage in a circular stairway, which went steeply down. I descended, minding carefully where I went, for the stairs were dark, being only lit by loopholes in the heavy masonry. At the bottom there were dark tunnel-like passages, through which came a deathly, sickly odour, the odour of old earth and newly turned. As I went through the passage, the smell grew closer and heavier. At last I pulled open a heavy door which stood ajar, and found myself in an old ruined chapel, which had evidently been used as a graveyard. The roof was broken, and in two places were steps leading to vaults, but the ground had recently been dug over, and the earth placed in great wooden boxes, manifestly those which had been brought by the Slovaks. There was nobody about, and I made search for any further outlet, but there was none. Then I went over every inch of the ground, so as not to lose a chance. I went down even into the vaults where the dim light struggled, although to do so was a dread to my very soul. Into two of these I went, but saw nothing except fragments of old coffins and piles of dust. In the third, however, I made a discovery. There, in one of the great boxes, of which there were 50 in all, on a pile of newly dug earth, lay the Count. He was either dead or asleep. I could not say which, for the eyes were open and stony, but without the glassiness of death, and the cheeks had the warmth of life, although their pallor and the lips were as red as ever. But there was no sign of movement, or pulse, or breath, no beating of the heart. I bent over him, tried to find any sign of life, but in vain. He could not have lain there long, for the earthly smell would have passed away in a few hours. By the side of the box was its cover, pierced with holes there and here and there. I thought he might have the keys on him, but when I went to search, I saw the dead eyes, and in them, dead though they were, such a look of hate. The once conscious of me or my presence, that I fled from the place, and leaving the Count's room by the window, crawled again up the castle wall. Regaining my own chamber, I threw myself painting upon the bed, and tried to think.